Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. The night was young, and so were our spirits as Jake and I lounged in the dim glow of my living room, each nursing a cold beer. We were reminiscing about college days, the reckless stunts and the thrill of being young and free. In a burst of nostalgia-fueled mischief, Jake grinned mischievously. "Hey, man, remember how we used to mess with people online? What if we did something like that now? Just for kicks," he suggested, his eyes twinkling with the familiar thrill of trouble. I laughed, the idea sparking a lightness in me. "Why not? Let's create a fake profile on a dating site. See if we've still got the magic touch." We set up a profile, nothing too elaborate. A charming, yet unassuming guy named Alex. As we filled out interests and preferences, our laughter filled the room, a throwback to simpler times. That was, until the moment everything changed. As we browsed through potential matches to see who Alex could mess with, a familiar face flashed on the screen. My heart sank as I stared at the profile of lovely Linda 32. It was Linda, my wife. That's Linda," I stuttered, my voice barely a whisper. Jake's laughter died abruptly. "Dude, are you serious? That's your wife? What the?" Panic and disbelief mixed with a rising anger. Without thinking, I clicked on her profile. There, smiling back at me, was the woman I had married 5 years ago. The profile was active, updated recently, and worse, set to looking for something discreet. "We have to message her," I said, my voice cold, my decision final. "Are you sure about this, man?" Jake asked, concern etching his features. "Yes. I need to know the truth." We crafted a message, light and flirtatious, and sent it off. To our shock, she replied within minutes. The conversation was flirty, too flirty for a married woman. The pit in my stomach grew as she agreed to meet Alex later that week. The rest of the night passed in a blur of scheming. Betrayal sliced through me like a knife, but from its sharpness emerged a cold, hard resolve. I would catch her in the act, expose her infidelity, and then, I would make her pay for the betrayal. The plan was simple. Jake would beat Alex in a public cafe downtown. I would confront her there, in front of everyone. She wouldn't be able to deny it with proof as blatant as that. As Jake left, I sat alone, the laughter and warmth of earlier that evening gone, replaced by a simmering anger and a sense of betrayal so deep it was almost suffocating. I was determined, more than ever, to see this through. Linda had made her choice, and now, she would face the consequences. Little did I know, this was just the beginning. The intrigue of what lay ahead was as unsettling as it was necessary. My once happy life was unraveling, and all I could think of was the looming confrontation that would inevitably change everything. Thursday arrived with a heavy gray sky, mirroring the turmoil in my heart. I hadn't slept, the image of Linda's dating profile haunting me throughout the night. My plan was set, and with every tick of the clock, the moment of truth drew closer. I met Jake at a nearby cafe an hour before the scheduled meeting. He was already there, seated at a table with a clear view of the entrance, dressed casually but looking out of place with the nervous energy he carried. "Dude, are you ready for this?" he asked as I approached, his voice low. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, my stomach twisting into knots. "You got everything set up?" Jake nodded, tapping his phone. "Yeah, all set to record the moment she arrives. Just signal when you want to step in." We didn't have to wait long. At precisely 3:30 p.m., Linda walked in. She scanned the room, her eyes bright and expectant. Seeing her like this, so vibrant yet so deceitful, fueled my resolve. She spotted Jake and walked over with a confident smile. "Alex?" she asked, extending her hand. "That's me," Jake replied, shaking her hand. "Linda, right?" Have a seat. I watched from a distance, my heart pounding in my chest as they exchanged pleasantries. Jake was playing his part perfectly, charming yet slightly aloof, keeping her engaged. I waited for the right moment, the signal from Jake, that it was time. After a few minutes of their light chatter, which seemed like hours to me, Jake glanced my way. That was it. I took a deep breath and stood up, my legs stiff from tension. Walking towards them, I felt every eye in the cafe on me, though they likely had no idea of the drama unfolding. Linda's back was to me, she laughed at something Jake said. That laugh, so familiar, so endearing, now felt like a betrayal. Linda, I said, my voice louder than intended. She turned, her smile fading into confusion, then horror, as she saw me. Mark? What are you doing here? We need to talk, I said, standing firm despite the shaking in my voice. This isn't what it looks like, Mark, Linda stammered, her face pale. It looks like you're on a date, I said coldly, anger seething through my words. Jake stood up, giving us space, his part played. Mark, please, let me explain, Linda pleaded, her eyes darting around, her composure cracking. No more lies, Linda. I saw your profile, the messages. How long has this been going on? My voice rose with each word, drawing curious glances from other customers. It's not like that. I felt lonely. You're always working, and, her excuses were cut off. Lonely? So you seek out strangers? I countered, disbelief and pain mingling in my tone. Linda's eyes filled with tears, her hands trembling. I'm sorry, Mark. I never meant to hurt you. The confession struck me harder than I expected. The cafe around us faded into a blur as the weight of her betrayal sank in. We're done, Linda. I want a divorce, I declared, the finality of my words hanging heavy between us. She reached out, but I stepped back, unable to bear the touch of the woman who had shared my life, yet shattered it so carelessly. Turning on my heel, I left the cafe, leaving Linda sobbing at the table. The cold air hit me as I stepped outside, but it was a relief compared to the stifling atmosphere inside. The first step was taken. The confrontation had set the stage for a harsh but necessary end. As I walked away, I knew this was just the beginning of a long, painful process, but one I had to see through to reclaim my life. The drive home after confronting Linda felt longer than usual, each red light a pause in my swirling thoughts. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, as the reality of my crumbling marriage settled in. When I finally arrived home, the house seemed emptier than before, the silence a stark contrast to the turmoil inside me. I sat in the dark living room, waiting. The clock ticked loudly, marking the time until Linda's inevitable return. She arrived just after sunset, her steps hesitant as she entered through the front door. The light flicked on, casting long shadows across the floor. Mark, can we talk? Linda's voice was shaky, remorseful. I remained silent for a moment, then turned to face her. There's nothing left to say, is there? My tone was flat, drained of anger but heavy with disappointment. Please, I need you to understand, she pleaded, taking a tentative step forward. I understand perfectly, I interrupted. You betrayed our vows. What's there to misunderstand? Linda flinched as if the words were physical blows. I made a mistake. I was selfish, and I'm so sorry, Mark. I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose our family. Her words stung, reminding me of what we had built together, now tainted by deceit. You thought about that before, Linda. Because it seems like you didn't think about us at all. She broke down, sobbing, her body racked with guilt. I was lost. I didn't know how to tell you how lonely I felt. You were always so busy, and I just... Stop, I said firmly. This isn't about me not being here. This is about you making a choice. You chose to step out instead of talking to me. Linda tried to approach, reaching out to touch my arm. I stepped back, unable to accept the comfort she offered. What are you going to do now? She asked through tears. I'm filing for divorce, I stated plainly. I can't be with someone I can't trust. Please, think about this. We can go to counseling. We can try to fix this, she begged, desperate. It's beyond fixing, Linda. You broke something fundamental. The decision was clear, my resolve firm despite the pain it caused both of us. Linda nodded slowly, resigned. What about Margarita? What will we tell her? We'll tell her the truth, that sometimes adults make mistakes, and sometimes things don't work out, I replied, thinking of our daughter, the innocent party in this mess. Can I stay in the guest room? Linda's voice was small, defeated. At least until we figure things out. I paused, considering. Despite everything, the thought of throwing her out was painful. Fine. But we're living separately under this roof. I'll sleep in our room. You take the guest room. Thank you, she whispered, a mix of relief and sorrow passing over her face as she retreated to the guest room. Alone again, I mulled over the next steps. The confrontation was just the beginning. Tomorrow, I would contact a lawyer and start the divorce proceedings. As painful as it was, retribution for her betrayal had to be meted out. It wasn't just about punishment, it was about respect and self-worth, about not allowing myself to be disrespected and discarded. The house was quiet again, but the silence was different now, charged, heavy with the weight of decisions made and the rough path ahead. I knew the coming days would be hard, but necessary for finding my way out of the betrayal that had darkened my doorstep. In the days following the confrontation, the atmosphere in our home became charged with a palpable tension. Linda and I moved like ghosts around each other, barely speaking, our interactions stiff and formal. My initial shock had given way to a cold, calculated anger. I spent my days planning my next steps meticulously, ensuring that Linda's betrayal would cost her more than just our marriage. One chilly morning, as I sipped my coffee, an idea crystallized in my mind, a plan that would not only expose Linda but also ensure she could never deceive anyone again the way she had deceived me. I set my cup down with a clink, my mind racing through the details. I started by securing a private investigator. The PI was a grizzled veteran with a knack for digging up dirt. Over the next week, he unearthed a slew of details about Linda's activities that even I hadn't been aware of: multiple affairs, lies about her whereabouts, and even financial deceit. Each new revelation fueled my resolve. Armed with this information, I called Linda into the living room one evening. The room was dimly lit, the light casting long shadows that seemed to slice the space between us. Linda, we need to talk, I began, my voice calm but carrying a sharp edge. She eyed me warily, sensing the change in my demeanor. What is it, Mark? I know about everything. The affairs weren't just online. You've been living a double life at my expense, I said, throwing a stack of photographs and documents onto the coffee table between us. Her face drained of color as she looked at the evidence. How did you? She started, but I cut her off. I hired a private investigator. Did you really think you could fool me forever? I stood up, towering over her as she sank into the couch. What do you want, Mark? Her voice was barely a whisper, fear mingling with her guilt. I want you to pay, I said simply. I've already set things in motion. Your employers will receive full details of your misconduct by tomorrow. Your friends, your family, everyone will know the kind of person you really are. Linda's eyes widened in horror. You wouldn't dare. I already have. And there's more, I continued. I'm suing for full custody of Margarita. I won't let her be raised by a liar and a cheat. You can't do this. She's my daughter too. Linda's voice cracked, her composure breaking. She deserves better than you, I replied coldly. And I have enough evidence to ensure the court agrees. Linda broke down completely, sobbing uncontrollably. But there was no going back. My heart had hardened against her pleas. The next few weeks were a blur. The legal battles were grueling but, in the end, decisively in my favor. Linda's life unraveled publicly and spectacularly. She lost her job, her friends, and most painfully for her, her daughter. As I stood outside the courthouse, the final decree of divorce in hand, I felt a strange sense of emptiness. The victory was Pyrrhic. I had destroyed the woman I once loved, and while justice had been served, the taste it left was bitter. I turned to walk away, Margarita's hand in mine. Behind me, Linda stood alone, a figure broken by her own misdeeds and the ruthlessness of my revenge. There was no going back for either of us. The betrayal had set us on paths we could never return from, forever parting us in a shadow of hatred and regret.